Hello everyone. Thanks for tuning in. So to start with, and I'll probably do another little video that shows this, but I'll be doing a live stream probably around 2:15 today, 2:15 Eastern time. And then tomorrow evening on Sarah Corrier's channel, I'll be doing a live stream as well. So today what I wanted to talk about, the video that I want to make is about how the models have been wrong and the lockdowns over and over and over again. It shows the lockdowns have done next to nothing. Now, the first thing that's worth pointing out is like a country such as Sweden. We had this doctor, Dr. Ferguson, at the Imperial College study. If you check out the last video I did, you could see that he was the guy who was responsible for the Imperial College study. He was one of the main people connected to the UK government. His study was used to enforce the lockdowns in both the US and the UK. He famously predicted 2.2 million Americans would die without the lockdowns, 500,000 Brits would die without the lockdown. And then 2 days after that prediction, he adjusts, or 2 days after Britain's lockdown, he adjusted that to 20,000, which I believe I figured out the math finally was 25 times more people would die if we didn't have the lockdown than if we didn't. Now, I talked to you about this before. The reason we could prove that that's wrong is because when we look at a country like Sweden that didn't do the lockdown, even if they say, well, just like we saw, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but it's in the UK, that's kind of their point man on this. But when he came out and admitted that the UK has the worst death toll other than the United States, despite the lockdown, he said, well, we can't compare, be careful comparing to other countries. That excuse works when you're talking about maybe 2, 3, 4 times the amounts of death. But the prediction for the model that they used said 25 times more people would die without the lockdown. That means that any factor of looking at Sweden and saying, well, their healthcare system's a little better, or, well, you know, their population's a little younger, or something like that, all of that would be overwhelmed by the massive apocalyptic amount of deaths that were predicted by the Imperial College study. Now, the gentleman who predicted that, and remember, that's what led to your lockdowns, he was off while he was saying that you're a rotten person if you don't just give up your livelihood and voluntarily embrace this lockdown, and that the government should enforce lockdowns. While he was saying that, he was banging his mistress, and he was diagnosed with COVID. Now, we see this all over the place. We saw that the mayor of Chicago, she told people they couldn't get a haircut. She went out and got a haircut. When she was confronted on it, she said, I need a haircut. I'm on television. See, to them, you could tell that it's not serious, because if they were afraid they were going to die, or they were going to cause tens of thousands of people to die, they wouldn't worry about haircuts. They wouldn't worry about banging their mistress. But the fact that they don't care shows that either they're psychopaths that don't care about people dying, and we shouldn't be listening to them anyways, or they know the truth, that this was all overblown hype in the first place. So now what we see is the UK admitting they have the worst death toll, that places like Sweden have done much better. How can that be? How can it be the place that had the biggest lockdown has the second worst death toll? We're told all the time in the United States, right? Our healthcare system needs to be more like the UK. The UK, that's a great healthcare system. They could do it in the UK. They have universal healthcare. Why can't we do it in the United States? Is their healthcare system so poor that we're starting to see more people die there despite the lockdown? I don't think that's the case. I think the case is the lockdown didn't do anything. We see it state by state. States that did less for the lockdown, such as South Dakota, such as Georgia, their curve has been almost identical to the states that did do the lockdown. Which goes to further show what I've been saying. I was one of the first people that I saw say this, was saying it way back in the early to mid-March. There are 2 types of viruses that you could deal with. One is a virus like Ebola. It has a really high death rate, so lockdowns like that might make sense. But other viruses that kill a lot of people, like the flu, they kill a lot of people not because the death rate, the mortality rate's really high, but because it spreads so much. That's what we're seeing with COVID. I'm not saying that the deaths by COVID aren't a big deal or anything like that. I think they're being overblown, and I've done videos on that to show that they're saying everything that remotely looks like COVID is a COVID death. Hence why we're seeing the flu numbers this year are way down. Remember, I told you from the get-go, the way we look at this, when it's all over is you don't look at how many people died of COVID versus how many people died of influenza. You look at how many people died of infectious diseases in the United States in 2019, in 2018, and how many in 2020. Because as I said, people don't want to talk about this stuff, but many of the people that have been, quote, died of COVID were people that would have died of flu or pneumonia and other illnesses such as that. So we need to look at the number in totality to see how much more of an effect COVID had, and did it warrant the lockdown that we're seeing? I think the answer will be no. So now we're seeing also that the majority of these deaths are in places like nursing home. If you watched Tucker's show last night, he had someone on that talks about Cuomo, the mayor of New York. He mandated that people that tested positive that worked in long-term care facilities be sent back to work. Now, if you really cared, why wouldn't we be doing things to help the places hardest hit most? Why wouldn't we be ensuring they get the tests first? Why wouldn't we be ensuring that state resources were going uniquely to these nursing homes? We know that's where the majority of deaths are occurring. Yet instead, we have this one-size-fits-all approach. Shut down everything. We can see that the shutdown, not only is it an infringement on our rights, as I've talked about over and over, not only is it devastating to us economically, not only do the leaders that are suggesting that we have these types of lockdowns not listen to their own recommendations or their enforcements, as we can see over and over, but now what we're going to see is when we lift the lockdown, it allows them to say, oh, look, death spiked, we shouldn't have lifted it. Just today, I saw a new models predicting 300-something thousand people dead by end of June if we reopen states. Let's say for a moment that that's true. This means that I was correct in the get-go when I said we should force the government to answer basic questions before they take away our rights and lock us down and shut out the economy. Because if they would have answered the question of how can we be sure that the lockdown will save lives, they would have had to say, well, it will only save lives if we enforce the lockdown for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Then it would have allowed the American people to make a more informed decision. Is it worth it? I say it's not worth it. But instead they said, oh, just temporarily lock down. Even Trump and them said, oh, just to lock down for a little. We might be open by Easter. But it turns out that they knew all along, according to their models, that, oh, if we don't have the lockdown for 6 months or so, then it'll be basically worthless. Now, the truth is that their models about the lockdown, I don't trust them. It's for anything, just like I don't trust the government and their numbers on any of this. They've lied to us repeatedly over and over. Remember, in Pennsylvania alone, 11% of the deaths that were attributed to COVID had to be redistributed, and once checked out, once coroners started speaking up saying, no, these deaths weren't from COVID, they said, oh, our bad, that was a mistake. We'll reclassify them. If that happened in Pennsylvania, how do we know it's not happening all over the place? But we see that places like Sweden, even Trump came out and said Sweden did it wrong. Look, again, I'm someone who's going to vote for Trump, most likely. I'm someone who supported Trump his entire presidency and the coup against him. I've been vocal on it. But what kind of insanity is this from Trump? On one hand, he's saying, liberate Michigan, open it up. But on the other hand, he's criticizing Georgia for opening up and saying countries like Sweden that did the right thing and didn't lock down, oh, well, they're worse than Finland, so it was a bad idea. But we see that places that lock down even more, like Italy, Germany, the UK, all have higher per capita death rates than Sweden. And it wasn't, again, here's the important thing to remember. It's not just saying, well, it's 0.5% here, 0.5% there. That's not really a justification for these types of actions. You know, things could be different. They said that 25 times more people would die without a lockdown. 2.2 million Americans would die without a lockdown. That's what they said. Then they adjusted those numbers to 60,000. That's what their models said. So the models were wrong. The models that our government used initially were wrong. The numbers show over and over that the mortality rate is increasingly low, that many, many people have it asymptomatically, which means that it's already spread. If the lockdown was going to work, you needed to lock down before it massively spread, and your lockdown needed to be complete. Not, well, we'll keep the liquor store open, we'll keep the candy store open, we'll keep Walmart open. At best, the government in all levels, state and federal, are inept. At worst, they're corrupt. think Trump's failed. And how it proves that the models that were used to justify the lockdown are wrong. If we know those models are wrong, why do we still have the lockdown? Violating quarantine. They're not taking it seriously. Words are cheap. I could tell you, hey, don't drink and drive. But if I'm drinking and driving every day, then it's clear that I don't take drinking and driving seriously. That's what they're saying. We need an enforcement. We need to enforce the lockdowns. Yet, the people saying that, they're not locked down, are they? So, it's time, again, the last thing I'll say, and this was the video I did previous to this. What is your representative done? What have the Republicans done in all this? The Democrats have gotten everything they wanted. Massive explosion of federal government, massive redistribution of wealth, massive taking away the rights of the middle class. They got everything. Of course they'll push for more, but this is a dream to them. What have the Republicans done? They go along with it and then say, well, the Democrats are bad. You went along with it. Everything. Where were the Republicans when this lockdown happened initially saying, no, this is wrong? We refuse to accept the lockdown without evidence that it's warranted. Where were they? There's one or two of them. Run for office yourself. I'm going to be running in 2022. Run for local office. Run for state office. Run for federal office. Find someone who's principled that's not going to just say whatever their polling place says. Oh, now it's popular to be for people's right. Now the lockdown's unpopular. So now you could be against the lockdown. But when it was popular, when people bought into the fear-mongering, where were you then? So, thanks for listening, everyone. I just want to say real quick, if you're out there and you're one of my mods, I want to get in touch with you all soon, just about a couple things that I have going on. I'm really trying to push my podcast that I have going on, which you can find me on all major podcast streams now. If you look up Normal America, it'll be on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Spotify. So you can find me on all those places. So I'm going to push that. And also, it's just some other things coming up. Please, if y'all really want to help me, don't worry about sending me money or anything like that, though that's always appreciated. But please, the little videos I do, not necessarily the live stream, but the small videos I did that are like between 7 and 2 minutes, if you could like and share those to people, I'd really appreciate it, because I think that'd be a good way to try to get my message out there. So thanks so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I'll be doing a live stream at about 2:15, 2:30 today, so tune in for that. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a good one.